Welcome back to Overtime here on WOTM. Mark, we have talked about the Atlanta Braves throughout the course of I'd say since about the later part of spring training. We're now after the first month of the season, and I feel like this team is doing this. It's been up and down. 12-16 their record is overall, even coming in as the favorite to win not only this division but make a strong run in the National League and probably challenge the Dodgers for a spot in the World Series championship. They're coming now off another loss. It's now a 4-game losing skid, swept by the Blue Jays over the weekend. They now begin another series. This one will be at Washington. What are some of your takeaways now as we're taking a look at a team that has just been up and down here recently?
Well, I think the first thing is when you play the Blue Jays and you see the stadium, first wonder where they are.
Right.
But obviously they can't play in Toronto because
That's
of COVID. So you expect them to beat the Blue Jays, but the Blue Jays aren't that bad. They got a lot of good young players, and they got a lot of what's been hurting Atlanta so far this season, and that's been left-handed pitching, specifically out of the bullpen. And the Braves have the second worst team batting average against left-handers this year. They're hitting 174. Some of the guys in their lineup, Ozuna 1 for 24 against left-handers, Freeman 2 for 28 against left-handers, 1 and 4 overall against left-handed starters. Only seen 5. If they would have seen more, it might be worse than 12 and 16.
Right.
But again, watching the Met game last night, which was a circus in its own, they were saying exactly what I try to give fans, which is an overall calm of most teams are giving themselves until the end of June, July 4th, because they need to figure out what they have. They're still waiting for some of their guys to get healthy. They're still waiting for their regulars to get back into stride. And you've heard them, a lot of the teams worry about early in the year, teams aren't making contact, strikeout totals are really high. All of the narratives that have been played so far in the 2021 Major League Baseball season have been a little different because last year was so odd, and now it's been almost 2 years since these guys really played.
Right.
So at least on this type of consistent schedule where now they're traveling and everything, it's been a while since some of these teams have done that. And I think there's so many more questions right now that they're dealing with. They're not really having time to focus on, okay, well, I mean, minor leagues haven't even started yet.
Right.
So that starts up May 4th. So a lot isn't back to normal yet. And some of the options that the players that you would depend on to come up and cover for the injuries that especially Atlanta's had, it's like you saw with d'Arnaud. d'Arnaud, as a Met fan, that's one of the things that I worried about was his injury. He's very injury prone, and he's got injured again. Now he's at a 60-day DL. Who knows when they'll see him again. Contreras comes up. He's one of the better prospects for catcher. But still, d'Arnaud was a guy they counted on. And just like with the Mets, you count on him, and he gets this weird injury, a thumb injury. He had so many thumb injuries with the Mets. But if they don't start to hit left-handed pitching, which they should, because they got some left-handed power, right-handed power in our lineup. Acuna can, and he's doing well against left-handers. The only one, though. I like Albies against left-handers. I know he can hit him. Ozuna 1 for 25. That's awful. Didn't stop him from taking selfies of himself. But I think there's also that, too. I think there's a little too much celebrating going on when they haven't done anything. They've only won a couple of games. Like, you don't have to celebrate after every home run. You don't have to let everybody know that you're hitting under 200, but you went yard. I think that's showing a little bit of a maturity. I expect more out of Atlanta because they know better, and because teams that win normally don't do that. Teams that win just win.
Exactly.
But I take nothing away from the excitement of the younger players. I got nothing against that. I just think that sometimes you have to, when you're not winning consistently, hold off on that a little bit.
And I think consistency is kind of the operative word that you use there. Speaking of consistency, we'll take a look at what they did last week. And one of the things that you pointed out was, between the April 26th and 28th, when they did go on that 3-game winning streak, the consistency was there, and you saw it across the board, across the lineup. And then here recently, being outscored by 20 runs, and that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg of how bad they're struggling offensively, especially.
I mean, when I left here Wednesday night after the show, we were laughing because the whole Rizzo thing with Freddie Freeman, Noah hits a home run, he's throwing shutout baseball. It looks like the Braves, now they're going in Toronto, they're not even going into Toronto, they're going to Buffalo. So you figure, okay, this is going to be easy for the Braves. They're right on track. We'll keep rolling along here. Then we get the Nationals next week.
Right.
And then they have this hiccup. First starting with that final series loss to Chicago. But, I mean, they had beaten them so bad the first 3 games. You didn't really blink when they lost the final in that series. But the way they've lost some of these games later in the games, they're not hitting some of these guys out of very mediocre bullpens. That would cause a little concern for me, because that's when you really need to make up those runs and win games. And the Braves have lost a lot of games late.
Right.
But again, it's just because they haven't gotten into their full swing yet. They still don't know what their regular lineup is going to be. They've experimented with Freeman batting second. I mean, they had Darno batting fifth, which you never should be batting fifth, because he leaves a ton of men on base. So they'll figure it out. I have no problem that they will.
And one of the guys that has figured it out is Ronald Acuna Jr., and he also won the National League Player of the Month for the month of April. We'll take a look at him. You're doing a nice little side-by-side comparison with the American League Player of the Month.
Yeah, Byron Buxton, a guy who was a number 2 overall pick, I believe, in 2014, and they've been waiting for this to happen for a while. Just a tremendous athlete. And there's really not that big a difference between the numbers between him and Acuna. The total bases, even though he played 6 less games, Buxton had just 1 less total bases. And a 1.363 OPS is outstanding.
Exactly. And also those 8 home runs, and Ronald Acuna Jr. is obviously having a sensational start to the season after the first month. We'll see if he can keep it up in the month of April. We'll take a look at pitcher Ian Anderson, by the way. And he's a guy that I'm sure a lot of Braves fans thought, hey, we'll have somebody that we can rely on the hill. And haven't been able to rely on him as much at the beginning, but here lately, he's pitched pretty well.
He had those 2 starts, especially when he gets the Yankees and then the Cubs, where he really dominated. You expect him to beat Toronto, but Toronto's got some good young bats.
Right.
But again, in National League East, there's just a lot of chaos right now. I don't know, last night on Sunday Night Baseball, Mets took an 8-4 lead into the bottom of the 9th. And then Diaz, who's been really lights out all year, except for in non-save situations. But they still throw him out there. Next thing you know, it looks like Royce Hopkins hitting a 3-run homer to tie the game. I'm like trying not to get too angry that they blew it. But Instant Replay then said that it didn't go over the wall. And then their old closer, Gerhard, who we've seen blow many games, came on and he got to save. And he saved the Mets. They took 2 out of 3 from the Phillies. A lot of teams in the National League East are showing bad signs early in the year, blowing games, not hitting with runners on base. So there's still a lot to be decided in the National League East.
Exactly. And last player we'll look at individually is Austin Riley, the infielder, having a pretty solid start to the year. Another guy that, both on offense and on defense, they really need to rely on, and he kind of needs to pick it up as well.
This is the best sign for him because Riley's a guy that they're going to need to hit.
Right.
And he was a little bit of a question mark coming into the year. You've seen how he's developed after the slow start. First 15 games, he's only 8 for 44. Now 20 for 44 his last 13 games. That's a pretty big number of games, big span of games. And he's hitting the ball hard, too.
Exactly.
And he's a big boy. He's a very good fielder. I think the Braves, if he rounds into form, they're all set at third base, and that answers a big question for them.
Exactly. See the OPS numbers also through the roof there as well. So we'll keep track of the Braves here in the month of May. Well, coming up next here on Overtime, the NFL Draft was certainly a good one for the boys over in Tuscaloosa. We'll talk Crimson Tide and the NFL Draft coming up next here on Overtime.